Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is William Nigro. I'm a recent graduate of the School of Environment and Natural Resources as of this spring, so it's good to hear that I'm back. It's great to be back in Columbus, and it's an honor to speak on behalf of a project called Seeds of a Renaissance, which was born in the winter of 2021 alongside friend, classmate, and photographer William Sharp. Seeds of a Renaissance is an active investigation to see how the humanities can be an effective vehicle of communication for future leaders of education and research of sustainable development. We are inspired by the intersection of outdoor accessibility and community resilience. This project is a documentation of the Ohio State University campus area through the mediums of film photography and poetry. By marrying academic inquiry to individual expression, Seeds of a Renaissance offers a renewed way of connecting to both the natural world and academia and hopes to cultivate empathy, care, and most of all, celebration of the parks, rivers, ravines, and creeks of Columbus, Ohio. I will now be reading a selection of poems from our book, Seeds of a Renaissance, which you can find right outside this door. I think these poems weave well into the essence of today's event, focusing around three themes: vision, connection, and opportunity. Thank you to Joe and Kalia and my mentor, Greg. And if you want to talk more about Seeds of a Renaissance, please say hello. For the rivers and parks of Columbus, Ohio, last week, I knelt beside a stream and saw a vision reflected in the water. Thousands of hands were braided into a necklace around the throat of the city, singing. These hands held each other like I tried to hold this pen, an unending celebration of what could be. So here, rising from the page is today. Take of the apple and bite. Two more. Is anyone a biker here in Columbus? Okay, so this one kind of focuses around biking down the Olentangy and just the sights and sounds that you get to pass through. On my bike, yellow daffodils praise the morning with their sweet fragrance. The solitary old man casts a line into you as the heart of a mother opens to the running arms of a toddler. I wonder if the two are the same. Clusters of geese squawk at boys who are playing basketball and laughing like summer. Then a great heron plunges into you, captivating the interest of a woman hunched over the strings of a guitar, singing into your wide company. I coast close to you, the city light shimmering upon your skin. I have one more, and this one goes out to all the front porches that you see all over Columbus, especially for college students. An ode to the porches of Indianola Avenue. Houses around my neighborhood do not have sprawling lawns, but front porch galleries, tomato vines that waterfall out of a Cafe Bustelo can, or stalks of kale that explode from a hand-painted bucket. Tapestries of wind chimes play with the sunlight, which linger on the street with an extra flourish of fantasy, long enough for you to pull out your camera and raise its voice to where an ivy-dressed chimney freckles a golden telephone wire, all above an alleyway where sunflowers and goldenrod crawl out of tar to search for the sun, and how just like bees of a hive hunger for a mother, I hunger for wildness and sanctity, and here there is no separation between me and a pathos propagating out of a wine bottle, nor a difference between a porch garden and a national park, which is to say wilderness is not a place, but it's a different way of opening, where inside you see all the ways we are sacred and wild. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's great to see you all and welcome you to our first Environmental Professionals Network breakfast and hybrid event of the academic year. My name's Tim Haab, and I'm the interim director of Ohio State's School of Environment and Natural Resources. It's a pleasure to see you all here in the room. I hope you enjoyed that delicious breakfast and the readings provided by Liam Nigro. Thank you, Liam, for opening our program. It's great to see the combination of the science and social sciences that go on in the school, along with the humanities and the passion that comes from the type of poetry that you write. So thank you very much. I also want to extend a welcome to those joining online via the EPN YouTube channel. Hello and welcome. This is my first time hosting an EPN event, and it's a joy to be starting my tenure here with a program that so closely relates to my professional interests and experience. I'm an environmental economist by training and have been a faculty member and department chair for agricultural, environmental, and development economics here at Ohio State for the past 23 years. For those who haven't heard, Dr. Eric Toman, my predecessor as the school's interim director, was recently recruited along with his partner, Dr. Elizabeth Toman, to join Colorado State University. Eric is now serving as the head of CSU's Department of Forest and Rangeland Stewardship. For those who know the Tomans, this is a great opportunity for them to be around family in the area and continue to advance their critical research on ecosystems and environmental management out west. They'll always be members of the EPN and are already sourcing Joe with first-rate speaker ideas from the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains. We wish them well. When Dean Kress approached me with the opportunity to support the school during our directorship transition, I eagerly accepted the opportunity. During my time leading the Agricultural, Environmental, and Development Economics Department, we had a very strong working relationship with SENR. Now that I've been in the position of director for almost 3 weeks, I'm happy to confirm my prior positive experiences, and from this position, I can even further see the academic and reputational strength of the school. The scope and impact of SENR is truly impressive. North to Lake Erie, south to the Ohio River, from our state's production agricultural regions to Appalachian forests, and within communities rural to urban. The school has state, national, and worldwide impacts. The footprint of our School of Environment and Natural Resources is large and growing. Next month, I'll provide some statistics about our enrollment, recent faculty hires, and exciting directions ahead. When I was leading research teams, I often analyzed Ohio's natural areas by estimating the economic gains to the people who use them and the economic gains to state agencies who provide and maintain them. I served on the US EPA's Environmental Economics Advisory Committee and recently helped our college create the Knowledge Exchange, an entity that houses data, translates science, visualizations, maps, articles, podcasts, and videos to assist Ohioans in making complex food, agricultural, and environmental decisions. Ohio has many natural resources worth investigating and advancing, including its river systems. Today's topic's of direct interest to me, and I'm so happy to be in the community with you all today to explore it. When I first learned about Rapid 5's project, I thought that Rapid 5's goal of creating the largest interconnected park system in the country perfectly aligns with my work and core beliefs as an environmental economist. Economics and the environment are sometimes seen as competing forces. Environmental economists recognize that the incentives for economic development often compete with, rather than complement, demand for natural recreation spaces. Market forces are powerful in fulfilling the demands for things that can be priced through markets, but for amenities that aren't typically produced in markets, but are nonetheless valued by the public, like parks and natural lands, it often takes coordinated partnerships between governmental, non-governmental, and private organizations, like Rapid 5, to fully represent the unpriced but highly valued societal benefits that nature provides. The agenda located in your program will give you a flavor of the great range and expertise and occupational positions that are shaping and leading this Rapid 5 project. Our speaker, Dr. Kerstin Carr, will provide an overview of Rapid 5 and will be immediately followed by a panel moderated by William Murdock and featuring Megha Sinha, Tina Mohn, and Tim Moloney, who further discuss the project. Before we start into the program, I want to acknowledge a few individuals who worked with the EPN to organize today's activities, including Jen Knoll and Edwina Tay at MORPC. Also, thanks to Tatiana Parfanova with Columbus Metro Parks for suggesting this program idea to Joe nearly 14 months ago. For those watching via YouTube, please see the link that Molly Bean is dropping into the chat now. This online brochure contains information about our speakers, including professional bios. Here in the room, there's a QR table located on your table that will take you to the same online digital brochure. Please take a photo of that QR code to view today's event agenda, speaker bios, and a list of sponsors and co-hosts. We also have some paper copies of the program that we encourage you to share at your tables. We organize our programs to be zero waste, so please follow the signs posted on the various trash, recycling, and composting bins located in the room and the hallway area. Students registered at a highly discounted rate today, courtesy of many sponsoring partners with special support from the individuals listed on the back of the program. Please take a minute to review today's organizational sponsors. For those on YouTube, feel free to utilize the chat function to post your comments, thoughts, and questions throughout this morning's program. Our team will be reviewing those questions and will take questions from the in-person audience after 9:15 a.m. this morning. Now it's my pleasure to welcome up Dr. Kerstin Carr.
Thank you, Tim. You did an excellent job setting the stage for my presentation and then the panel discussion coming here. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, give you a quick overview where we are, and then letting you see the panel discussion here. But before I give you an update on Rapid 5, I do want to acknowledge that I'm wearing two hats today, one as a board member of Rapid 5 and one as the Chief Regional Strategy Officer at MORPC, or the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, which is Central Ohio's Regional Council for Local Governments. MORPC was a big part in its original vision for Rapid 5 and is an important agency here in Central Ohio around regional collaboration, long-term planning, and data and research services that really help inform important decisions around housing, around mobility, around growth, sustainability, of course, and equity as well. And a lot of our work is around planning for the future. We're expected to become a region of over 3 million people by the year 2050. And as we're growing, we have the opportunity to be really intentional about it and to ensure that we are improving public health and access to opportunity for all our residents. Initiatives like Rapid 5 or the Central Ohio Greenways Board, which is trying to add 500 more miles of regional trails to Central Ohio, are helping our region to think holistically about our communities. And when we look at our green spaces, let's see. Okay. When we look at our green spaces, which includes our beautiful streams and river corridors, we know that we already have really incredible places today. Just look at these statistics in terms of blue and greenways and nature spaces in our region. And these statistics are only focused on on Franklin County alone. And so if we expanded to Central Ohio, we would be even more impressed ourselves just knowing what we have locally here. So it makes sense that we should build upon what we have today and expand it, but do it really thoughtfully and creatively so that every Central Ohio resident will be within 1.5 miles of a park, a trail, a blueways, or a green space. And so in 2021, the Urban Land Institute of Columbus, together with MORPC, challenged 5 design firms to reimagine the 5 river corridors here in Central Ohio. We're talking about the Big Darby, the Scioto River, Olentangy, the Elm Creek, and the Big Walnut as well. And these design firms did not disappoint at all. Megha Sinha will be on the panel. She was on one of them. They came up with such creative and thoughtful ideas about how each area could be expanded and activated, while really also honoring our history and the culture around it and thinking about protecting the environment that we have. And so we saw incredible ideas of how to utilize some of the space for greater environmental protection, also for building more fun opportunities for education and recreation, to better connecting underserved areas to green space nearby. I just picked one example of each of the river corridors here on the slide, but there's an online book available on rapid5.org where you can see all the detail, information, and ideas that the firms came up with. All of this work was guided around 5 pillars, really making sure, again, that we're intentional and around truly creating places that ensure a high quality of life for all residents. And so those pillars that you see here are in no particular order, but they are synergistic. We're talking about recreation, inspiring play and joy, kind of the awe in being in nature, the sense of adventure. We're also talking about health and well-being and creating the community conditions where everyone can thrive. Think back to the pandemic and how many of us rediscovered nature and used it as a way to get out and feel better, but also to connect with other people. We're talking about environmental stewardship here, thinking about how can we create sustainable and ecologically sound practices that support a healthy region here. Economic vitality, Tim mentioned that already. As we're trying to recruit and attract and retain talent here in Central Ohio, we know having a vibrant region that provides active opportunities is really important. And then certainly last but not least, equitable access. How can we expand access and mobility options to residents from all walks of life? And so these beautiful designs, along with looking and assessing our natural resources, really resulted in big questions here. We asked questions like, what if it was possible to connect all 5 waterways into a vast series of connected parks and greenways? What if we could provide a green and sustainable framework for the continued growth for Central Ohio? What if we could find a way to make major parks and recreation facilities really in close proximation of all residents here in Franklin County and Central Ohio? And really out of these questions, Rapid 5's vision was born, which is to connect us to nature and to each other. So the timing couldn't be better. I already mentioned that we are expecting growth. It puts Central Ohio at a tipping point. We will grow, but we must grow well. And then based on many stakeholder conversations and community meetings, it really looked like a great endeavor to undertake to figure out how we could better connect our 5 waterways, the nearly 40,000 acres of parks and green space that's already around it, and the hundreds of miles of trails to build out the largest interconnected park system in the country, while also using Rapid 5 as a North Star for green and sustainable development that allows us to be a region in a park. This is what Dr. Amy Acton used as a slogan, and I thought that really captures well of kind of envisioning who we want to be and how we want to look like. I also want to point out this map that our mapping team created, and I think it's so beautiful. It depicts how we could or how we should lead with water, our life source, and how the streams and tributaries are like a human vascular system. We are all interconnected and interdependent. Let's look at Columbus like a beating heart with the waterways and the tributaries as its arteries and veins, and get away at looking at Central Ohio as a map of circular highways and roads. So over the past year, we had a dedicated team helping us set up the organization. I think many of you are aware that Dr. Amy Acton did an incredible job with her team setting up this strong nonprofit, attracting a very active and passive board of directors. Tim is on the board with me as well, and building this enthusiasm for the vision, and then also helping raise funds from the private and philanthropic sector. So she really helped us create a proof of concept. We know we can be there, we can get there, and so we're now starting the work of operational, that's a hard word, to do the operational work and strategic work of how we set up that nonprofit to move forward. One thing I want to make clear here to this room is that this nonprofit is not going to replicate any efforts that are already going on, but really help supplement what's happening already with Linkuts, what's happening with Central Ohio Greenways, what's happening with housing, and again, kind of serving as this larger framework and North Star for Central Ohio. So before I turn it over to William and our panelists, I want to close here with a short video that I hope will inspire you to think differently about our way of life here in Central Ohio.
You feel it. We all do. The desire for connection, a yearning for something more. This is our turning point, our moment of inflection to rewrite the past and embrace the natural canvas that built our region, to invite the sounds of rustling leaves and flowing streams, to harmonize with the glass and concrete, to strike a new chorus woven by nature, inviting all to enjoy. Greenways, waterways, and parks will be the catalyst for our city's growth and prosperity, connecting and empowering our communities, shaping a healthy, happy, and more equitable society, where nature thrives outside everyone's front door, inspiring a vision that can't be unseen.
Well, aren't you inspired? With Kerstin and the metaphor of the beating heart for waterways at the core of the spirit of Central Ohio, the poetry that Liam kicked us off with, Tim for stepping up and leading the school. I'm really inspired, and we haven't even got to the panel yet. So let's give Dr. Carr a big round of applause. So I'm William Murdock. I'm the executive director at the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. We like to say our friends call us MORPC, so you all can call us MORPC. Kerstin did a good job of talking about MORPC's role in the region as a convener and as a trusted advisor as we help plan for growth and sustainability here in Central Ohio. But what she didn't mention as an aside is if you're an environmental professional, and I'm assuming you're all environmental professionals, we're a resource for you. We're a place where you can collaborate, whether you're doing your own research and need data or mapping, or think of us as a resource. If you're a student, we have paid internships in the summer. So make sure you come up and talk to us afterwards about that. Well, as we transition to our panel, I think it's really important when you think about Rapid 5 and all of the work we're talking about with streams and waterways and nature, to recognize we're at a really special moment in Central Ohio, and Kerstin alluded to this, where we're growing, and that growth can perhaps be a threat to the things that we care about, but if we do it right, it could also be a way that we can unlock better environment, better connections for nature, for people throughout the region, a way to correct some of the wrongs. And that's what we're talking about today is, can Rapid 5 help us grow better as we get bigger? So I'm really excited to jump into this panel today. And as I welcome them, I should also mention I'm wearing a second hat too. I'm a graduate of the School of Environment and Natural Resources. If you don't believe me, my advisor, John Haywood, is here, and I owe him a lot. So thank you, Dr. Haywood. Let's welcome the panel up, and we'll just have them each come up, and we'll start with Megha Sinha from NBBJ, and Tina Mohn from City of Columbus, and Tim Moloney from Metro Park. So let's welcome them to the stage. So we were talking a little bit before the panel, and I think each of these represents that excitement and that enthusiasm we have for what our waterways could do here in Central Ohio, and really excited to get into the conversation. So we're gonna let them introduce themselves, and as they do, I want them to say how they got involved and inspired by Rapid 5. And Megha, we're gonna start with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Is this working? Okay. Good morning. It's really nice to be here. This is not daunting at all. Not. And then following up with that poetry and Kerstin. All right, so expectations are high. Megha Sinha, I am a principal with NBBJ. NBBJ is a consulting firm, a design firm. In my kind of particular role, I'm an urban planner, an architect in the past life. So our connection with Rapid is, I guess, multifold. But because we are a design practice, at the heart of it, projects like this is what we live for. We don't get them so often, but we live for it. Columbus is our backyard, so this obviously is a local impact project, and we love projects like this. Our practice is guided by what we call an earth-first mindset, and it's really thinking about community health at the center of it all. So those kind of two prongs is what we practice with. And so when Rapid reached out and said, this is an idea, and there's this, and it wasn't Rapid, it was just MORPC. Here's the project, we're like, yes, absolutely. Do we have a year to do this? They said, no, you need to think about, this vision needs to be all sorted in a month. You're like, sign us up for this, because we love a challenge. Who doesn't want to do this complex project in a month? But that's how we got involved, and I have to say, we have never been involved in a project with this kind of collaboration, public sector, private sector, across communities, multi-jurisdictional, and then having multiple designers. Of course, designers, we compete with each other, but we're playing in the same sandbox for one common goal. So that was kind of our entry into this.
Good morning. I'm coming at this sort of from two different perspectives. From a professional perspective, I work with the City of Columbus, the Recreation and Parks Department, and we're managing over 14,000 acres, 415 parks. And the idea, specifically for my role, is acquisition, conservation, and then activation of parkland. And of course, that looks a lot of different ways to a lot of different people, a lot of different agencies. For our department, we connect the people of the community through nature, wellness, and creativity. And Rapid 5 is that. It fills all of those buckets, and also looking at it from a personal perspective. I play a lot with my kids. They're now 16 years old, but I visioned them when they were 6 years old, putting on some big boots, a heavy jacket, a big ego, going out, tackling volunteer activities, honeysuckle 4 times the size of them, and also getting in the water, clearing log jams, participating in activities through my work, but also volunteering. And now 16 years old at Kilbourne High School, they're doing a lot of the same work. And when I think about all those things, I know that we're in the right seat, the City of Columbus being at the table here.
So Tim Moloney with, my microphone's better than yours. And I'm the loudest person in the room, and they give me a microphone. That's a mistake. With Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks, to kind of go off of William, I too am a graduate of this fine university. You can look at my career as either a good career or somebody that can't get outside of I-270, but I told somebody earlier, I've lived every day of my life inside of I-270. So not to steal anyone's thunder, I have been involved in Rapid 5 since the first time my mom said, what in the hell are you doing in this house? Get outside. So most senior member of Rapid 5, I'm going to say. No, with Metro Parks here in Central Ohio, this has been our mission since day one. Since Walter Tucker, our first director secretary, decided to build this concept of a park on a waterway in Central Ohio, where the local media chastised, why would you build a park so far out on Livingston Avenue, a 2-lane gravel road that nobody will ever go to? And I thank Walter Tucker every day, and I'm nervous to look to my left. My predecessor, John O'Meara, followed along those lines in building these amazing parks with 2 purposes: to conserve the natural resource and to get people outside engaged in the environment. The 2 core missions of preserving: acquisition and knowledge. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, and let's build on this. What an exciting start to the conversation. So Megha, Kerstin had talked about the 5 pillars of Rapid 5. And just in case folks forgot, it's health and wellness, social equity, mobility choice, environmental stewardship, and economic vitality. So as a designer, how are you thinking about how this fits into this vision of an interconnected park system?
Yeah, so these 5 pillars, we have to kind of acknowledge that they're really rooted. They didn't come from anywhere, right? They're really rooted in community needs and aspirations, and they define for us what Central Ohio wants as a priority and as a goal at the highest level. So as designers, that's really kind of grounding for us in anything that we do. As I was saying, that this happens to be a very, very complex endeavor. And any complex system, and all of you work in kind of the environmental world, any environmental system, and then you layer on it an urban system, it's extremely complex. So as we think about planning and designing for something like this, there are many, many layers that you start kind of thinking about, layers that would impact a park system and layers that would get impacted by it. So as you think about it, we could get pulled into many directions. Some of the layers could be just thinking about water and watershed, biodiversity, thinking about recreation, demographics, equity. So as you think about all of this, you need, and as designers, these pillars really kind of gave us guardrails, and it became, if you may, a framework within which we kind of set parameters and design interventions. There's one pillar I really want to talk about. I mean, I can talk about all of them, but it's around mobility choices, and that became a huge driver for this, because we could design a beautiful park system all day long, but if you don't connect it and you don't provide access to that park system, then it's really kind of a park system for the sake of nature, which is great, but we want people to enjoy it and connect to it. So part of our design thinking was not just thinking about all of this in vacuum, but thinking about all the mobility systems already in place. For those of you that are familiar with Central Ohio, we have lots of efforts going on in creating a well-connected region. One of them is the Link Us, so look it up. It's thinking about bus rapid transit. But there are existing roadways. The trail system is another one. So what we did as designers, we put it all together and we looked at the gaps. So if you think about the beating heart needed to be connected, and mobility choices, that's one of the pillars, became a driving force for design and design thinking, which set the vision for Rapid 5. Does that get there?
Oh, yes. I could, if we had time, we'd cover the other four. I think what's so exciting about what you say is that access is important. We have all of these plans to build out hundreds of miles of trails along our waterways and these conservation plans, but connecting folks to those, to give them access to nature, give them access to build character, have experience for health, and especially those who live in places inside 270 that aren't connected to these. It's so much at the heart of Rapid 5. And Tina, this is a great place for you to come in. So when we were talking earlier, I said, well, what are you doing at Columbus? And she said, well, I'm just overseeing a lot of the parks and conservation efforts, or all of them, and 14,000 acres, and it's a pretty big deal when you think about the 5 waterways and you think about the city of Columbus being the 15th largest in the country. Tina's got a really important role to talk about how Rapid 5 is really informing how the city's moving forward on connecting parks to improve quality of life, to improve recreation, and just talk a little bit about that role and that vision and how the city's exciting it.
How much time do I have?
Right.
So the idea of accessibility and connectivity, like I said earlier, our department's mission is that. The pillars of Rapid 5 is that. And thinking about what are the easiest things to do. For us, in some cases, the easiest thing to do is acquire the land, sometimes. The other aspect of it is, what are we going to do once we have it? And Megha mentioned earlier, what's the idea of preserving, conserving property, parkland, which is really, really important. We have over 20 nature preserves. A lot of them have very limited access, but also they serve as spaces for academia, like you all, and also other activities, educational activities. But we have to really think about when we're connecting people, when we're connecting places, we're also connecting the nature of that. And we can do that a lot of different ways. The greenway system, the blueway system, providing parkland, green spaces, linear parks, which we're in the process of acquiring a 7-acre linear park in the Linden area. But thinking about when we're spending the time strategically, we have to make sure that we're connecting with our partners. That's where we're really getting the connectivity and looking at alignment in our overall goals and creating spaces for underserved areas. Also to think about ADA accessibility and how we're creating our playgrounds in spaces like that. And just making sure that if we are acquiring the properties, regardless of where it is, we have to make sure that at some point we're served and charged with thinking about the future, not just then, and what does that look like for all of us.
Great, thanks, Tina. And so, Tim, you talked a little bit about Metro Parks. It's really clear to all of us in this room, you are the spirit that leads this team for the enthusiasm around Metro Parks. And as a side note, if you ever get invited to a tour with Tim, don't show up in a suit and tie, because you'll end up muddy, and he doesn't care whether you're in a suit and tie. So with that as a background, Tim, I think just thinking of Metro Parks here, when a lot of people ask, well, Rapid 5 interconnected park system, their first question sometimes is, well, don't we have a Metro Parks? And it's bigger than that. And if you could talk a little bit about how Metro Parks fits into that Rapid 5 vision and how it benefits what you're working on.
No, and I think Tina kind of answered that, and she said the word partnership. And the relationship between the City of Columbus and Metro Parks goes way back. Some of you are familiar with, let's say, Scioto Audubon Metro Park. That is a joint effort between two large entities to create a space that, for some of you with a little bit of gray hair remember, was polluted, a impound lot, a den of iniquity, look that up if you don't know what that means, a good place to buy crack cocaine, at a good price. That's a joke. You're supposed to laugh at those things. It was not very nice. And the partnership between the City of Columbus and Metro Parks, that now is rated as one of the top 10 urban parks in the United States every single year. Look that into the Rapid 5 mantra. Accessibility. Boy, we're right in the middle of the City of Columbus. Environmental stewardship, right there. Every one of the 5 pillars is on with Scioto Audubon. What if we take that even bigger? And Metro Parks, we are very fortunate. We have partnerships with almost every community, township, everything in Central Ohio. But what if we can consolidate that into one effort, where it's not Metro Parks working with Columbus, and then tomorrow Metro Parks working with Worthington, then Whitehall. What if we are all working together every single day on those 5 pillars? You won't be able to stop that momentum, whether we try or not. And I think that's what we can really bring to the table, of that we can make sure that Tina, Metro Parks, and Whitehall are working together every single day.
Well, it's such a good example that you give, too, because so many times, and for those of you who are thinking, especially the students who are thinking about a career in parks, sometimes your top job, and Tina and Tim will tell you this, is to worry about what lies within your boundaries, because that's where your mayor is, or that's what your board cares about. And the challenge is, and where it gets really exciting, is to do what they're talking about, and how does that connect to each other, and how is there a vision that's bigger than just the system that we're connected to? So I want to go back to those 5 pillars, and Megha said, and you can sense her enthusiasm here, that she could talk about all 5 of them, and she could. What she mentioned earlier, too, when Rapid 5 kicked off, these firms were given a very short time to do it. And their enthusiasm was evident, but what she didn't tell you is we gave them a page limit, and they all blew through the page limit because there were so many ideas and there was so much excitement about this. So we ignored the page limit. But Megha, I think what I'd like to really dive into now is along the lines of those pillars is innovative design concepts and ways that we're thinking about how residents can connect with environmental preservation, recreation. Tim mentioned earlier the value of economic growth. Could you talk a little more about that and maybe give us an example of one of these ideas you've designed?
Sure. So first I have to say, I agree with what Tim said, that these don't have to be at odds with each other, right? I think our mistake has always been that we think about, well, if you do better economic growth or development, then, well, maybe environmental preservation shouldn't be your focus, right? They have to work together. So that's kind of the baseline of it all. So for us in our practice, and every project is a rapid project, right? And by what I mean by that is, as we think about, and you've heard this now over and over again, it's a blue-green infrastructure If your site, right, project site, is right at a river corridor, that's an obvious one, right? Oh, because it's at the river corridor and you're going to like fit into the vision. But if your site is anywhere else too, within this bigger watershed or region, you are impacting that system. And so that's something we truly believe, and that's the start of everything we do, right? So if you think about how you connect, how that site, even from a stormwater perspective or connecting by street infrastructure, how you become part of that vision is really, really important. So that's kind of at the macro scale. At the micro scale, all these pillars, right, if you think about equity and sustainability, stewardship, economic engine, these are design drivers for a lot of the design work that happens, not just at NBBJ, but it's something that's important now as a driver across kind of the design world. These don't have to be really complex ideas. Our own office has a pocket park in downtown Columbus. It used to be a parking lot, the whole site, and yes, the developer could build the whole building, but working with us as designers, we thought it was important to carve out a little pocket park. It's not big, but it's enough, and there are trees in there, and there's a place for people to sit, and guess what? Birds sit on those trees. So, I mean, it's little things like that. It could be the pothos in a wine bottle. It could be a rooftop garden. In any little way, if you can provide those pieces of environmental benefits and recreation, and all of this, by the way, it's an economic driver too, because tenants love this kind of stuff. The developers are looking to connect to green and nature because it's a selling point. So yes, let's connect it all together, and it does become a thriving kind of all of these pillars together, and you can do environmental preservation.
That's so true. And I think, Tina, this is really where you come in here. So when we're thinking about growth in Central Ohio is projected, and MORPC has been the agency projecting that, we're expected to add 750,000 people. And yes, Tim, some of that will be outside of 270, but a lot of it's going to be inside 270. And that's where it gets really complicated, really fun, really challenging. And the city of Columbus is right in the heart of that. So when you're thinking about urban growth and Rapid 5 and our waterways, how is that playing into projects that you're working on?
It's the driver. I think in thinking about this, I think I listened to a podcast the other day, 0.2% growth, 7th largest state, 37 new people coming into Franklin County. We're pushing, 12 million people. Thinking about all that, and from a planning perspective, that's something that we've been doing. And we're just growing it by stretching and reaching, collaboration with partnerships. Tim described well at Scioto Audubon. We also have 3 creeks and a few other parks. But if we're not thinking about this strategically from a master planning standpoint, then we're behind. And we want to make sure that folks have a walk shed within 10 minutes to a green space. And that's a goal that we're on target, but we know that we have to stay ahead of it and working and collaborating with developers as well to make sure that from our parkland dedication perspective that we, which is one of our city codes, that we're utilizing all the tools in the toolbox right now to make sure that we're providing these spaces and safe spaces for everyone within the community. It's just top of mind.
I mean, think about that, a 10-minute walk shed in the city of Columbus, the 15th largest city in the country having that type of access. Rapid 5, Kerstin talked about, is looking at, for all 5 watersheds, having 1.5 miles access to those waterways. And in our work at MORPC, and I know each of the panelists see this too, we're really proud here in Central Ohio, the network we've built, the parks we've built, and how they're being used. But when we look at who's using them, we notice some pretty striking gaps about certain communities and neighborhoods here in Central Ohio that either don't have physical connection to our waterways or maybe don't feel like they belong in those places. And Tim, I know you and Metro Parks have been thinking a lot about disadvantaged communities and how to bring people into the parks and into nature. And maybe you could talk a little more about that.
I'm going to go way off script here because of something that just
wouldn't be
happened.
the first time.
Yeah, it just happened over this past weekend, or Labor Day weekend. I'm going to brag about Metro Parks right now, and I think it's really critical, especially to the students and the leadership in this room, of the little story I'm going to tell. Thursday before Labor Day, we were visited by somebody from the Somali community and said, hey, we're going to have a little event at Sharon Woods on Saturday. We just wanted to give you a heads up. Okay. Sharon Woods, 600 plus or minus acres, right there by 270, kind of connected to the Somali community. So we said, great. So our staff made the decision, hey, we're going to close off Apple Ridge, it's one little section of the park, for this group. That's all the detail we had. So 10 o'clock in the morning comes, nobody. 11 o'clock comes, park's starting to get a little bit crowded, getting a little bit nervous. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock, people start arriving. Bounce houses, food trucks, music. We're like, well, this ain't 350 people. 5 o'clock arrives. We're about 1,500 people. 6 o'clock arrives. We are 3,500 people from the Somali community engaged in one of our parks to a place that they feel comfortable, they feel safe, and they're part of our community now. I challenge everybody in this room to have that attitude for any community, to be able to get to your spaces. And I love the NBBJ comment. Your little space is open to everybody every day. Tina's parks are open to everybody every day. Metro Parks every day. We have to have that philosophy, because those 3,500 people who came to Sharon Woods that day, 80, 90, 95% of them are now part of the solution to our park problem.
Yeah, that's not off script at all, Tim. And I think it really points to how, when we're thinking about conservation and preservation, about how to invite people in a way that balances those two. It's so important, and I know that's at the core of what we're working on with Rapid 5. And Megha, I want to go to you on this, because we talked a little bit about the economic benefits. And could you talk a little more about how, when you're doing a project, especially like a waterway project or something connected to Rapid 5, how are you balancing that conservation, preservation, nature, economic benefit? They don't need to be mutually exclusive, but tell us how you're thinking about that when you're designing.
So, so if we were just designing for ourselves, then that would be the easy part, right? But we are always designing for a client or an entity, or let's say the developer. So our work is to always think about or bridge the gap between what we think, what we believe is right by the community, the larger good, the greater good, but also bring in value to whoever that we are working for, right, our primary client. And I think that's where the beauty is, because something like Rapid 5, as a brand, as a principle, can really shed that kind of value and help make a case for what is really, really important. I have to say this, from a personal standpoint, none of us should be thinking about any kind of design that doesn't think about climate change and how we are. But that's kind of a personal thing, right? But I think that's really, really important, because you start at that sort of highest level of thinking, and then you bring it down to design. So if you're thinking about a site that has, I'll just say this, most sites end up having a tree. Don't cut that tree, right? So we start thinking at the very small level, thinking about assessing the tree. How do you save and design around it? There are sites where you have wetlands, which may look like nothing to anyone, but it's on the designer to do the assessment, the due diligence, to understand the value that brings, and then fold it into the design thinking, and then bring value to the client or the developer. Developers right now are, by the way, this is a great time to be developing in Central Ohio. If you haven't heard, we are growing by a large amount. A lot of the developers coming are from out of town, right? And that's great, but they don't bring perhaps the compassion and passion that we might have for Rapid. So it's for us as designers to bring that thinking to it, and it's for the local design community to show the way. So again, this is all going off script. But I think it's the designer can design all day, but it's really bringing all these kind of pieces together and having the developer community pull their weight in it, in collaboration with the public sector, because the developer isn't going to do it by themselves. They have to be doing something that's spearheaded at the public sector level. So the designer's role is really to take all of this, pull it all together, and really kind of give it the design, the beauty of it. So I think our job is a little bit kind of easy. It's really all of these pieces coming together. That's the hard part. I don't know if I answered your question at all.
You know, you did. And Megha, you and I are both planners, so you know we could go off on a big planning tangent here, and I will for a second. So when we think about this growth, it's the context for what's happening. It's real tempting just to say, well, we just want to stop it. But that's not how it works. So really the onus on us as planners, as environmental professionals, is how can we make that growth better? How can we make it honor and connect to nature? How can we help it fix some of the disconnections to disadvantaged communities in the past? And that's really, if you're a student and you're thinking about a career, whether it's climate or parks management or anything looking at natural resources, there's an opportunity here. And frankly, I think we need you more in Central Ohio than most other places, because we got to do it right if we're going to grow. And, you know, Tina, speaking of students and folks wanting to get involved, I know the city's really deep in thinking about your planning for facilities, you're planning on Rapid 5. Could you share a little bit on how people could get involved with your planning on that? And maybe as you've been into it, what kind of lessons have you learned as people get involved?
Absolutely. In the work that we do, the outreach work that we do and engagement with stakeholders, we participate a lot in area commissions, civic associations. I was just looking at our coordination, collaboration calendar that we have, and my team alone has had the opportunity to touch base with over 400 entities or organizations in the community. And that means that we're in the community, that we're listening, we're taking the advice that folks are providing in how to better connect communities, and also learning about what we're missing, the gaps. Where is it that we can fill in some blanks? And maybe that those are uncomfortable conversations, and maybe that means that we're stepping outside of a comfort zone a little bit, but I think we're there. We're in that space. We're in it together, and so that we're making sure that whatever the space is, it's sustainable, it's equitable, it's helping, like Tim was saying, their event at Sharon Woods, it's promoting culture. And we can do all that with conservation. It's one of those things that I think innately just brings people together, and as long as we're able to provide that sort of space, the engagement comes, and you all are doing it right now. Showing up to different spaces to be able to collaborate and also just speak up and share with the community and others, the other organizations, area commissions like I'd mentioned earlier, block watch groups, all of those things, all of those ways are outreach efforts that we're listening. All three of us, we're listening with what's being said and using those as tools for our toolboxes.
Yeah. And Tim, I want to build on that and talk a little bit about implementation and partnerships. And when you run a Metro Parks, you could just focus on the land that you own, but I know that you've particularly developed a knack for figuring out the unfigure-outable. And could you talk a little bit about how inside 270 you've really found partners and new ways to try to unlock parks and waterways for everybody?
For those of you who know me, you know that I do no preparation, and I don't even read the notes. They say, Tim, you got to read these notes. So you're going to think this is all set up, but it's not. How do we do that? We never give up. That's the easy answer, but I got Tina sitting right next to me. Tina in her role, Metro Parks in our role, by the way, I do nothing. We're at the initial stages of developing Great Southern Metro Park, which is a collaborative effort not only between Columbus Rec and Parks and Metro Parks, but Ohio Department of Natural Resources, American Electric Power, Shelley Materials, Casto Development, City of Columbus Development Department, a shopping center, an underserved community, a very large unhoused part of our community to develop what's going to be, depending on when we open it, 21st or 22nd Metro Park. It was a little bit of a neighborhood park a few years ago that, and Tina, jump in when I misspeak, that kind of ran its course, that was no longer serving the purpose it originally was intended, and we're going to make it something amazing. I'm kind of looking at John now. John and I took a walk on the property a few months ago. William and I walked it. You really have to have vision to see what's going to happen here. But our staff's going to do it, Tina's staff, we're going to do it. What we need to do is engage that community. That community in the south end of Columbus can feel like they've been ignored. What's going on down there? What's new? What's exciting? Sure, there's a great community center right up the road from it. There's going to be great trails thanks to MORPC. We're going to take a trail all the way from 270 all the way to Scioto Audubon, which means you're in a sense connected from 270 on the south to 270 on the north. None of this happens without everybody working together. And it's a head scratcher at times. I can tell you, Tina and her team and our team at Metro Parks, if you would be in those conversations, you would think we hate each other. But it's where we get to the good, because we know the end project is to serve those people in that community with an absolutely amazing resource. Yeah. I have no idea what your question was.
Well, it's about inspiration. We started with the humanities and getting inspired and seeing potential and seeing vision where others might not immediately. And that's what you're talking about. If you've been on that tour with Tim, and I think all of us up here have been in projects like this, when you go there, it may be really hard to see the connection to nature. It may be really hard to see how you can turn something into that. I know Scioto Audubon was the same way. When first people said, yeah, this could be a park, and you're standing in a sea of broken down cars and polluted lands, it could be really hard to see this as a place for nature. And so helping to communicate that vision, helping to bring in partners, it's not easy, but it's inspiring work. And Megha, as we're thinking about projects you've worked on, can you talk a little bit about that spirit of convincing others there's a vision where others may not see potential?
Yeah. So I just building on what Tim was saying, we are in an interesting time because we always have been, right? We're not a monolith community. We are diverse. We in Central Ohio are also welcoming and have been welcoming for a while now a lot of new Americans. And they look different from us. Their needs are different. Their cultural backgrounds are different. And so recognizing that when it comes to design and thinking about how you make that space feel home to them, feel comfortable to them. I'm telling you, growing up where I grew up, I'm not a runner. I'm not going to put on running shoes, but I enjoy parks differently. I like to walk. I like to sit. So just even those nuances, if you design with the runner in mind or the biker in mind, you might lose me. I'm like, yeah, this is not for me. So anyway, that was just building on this. Repeat your question.
About convincing others that there's a vision where it might not be apparent.
So I think what Rapid did was a great way to do it. And this video that Kerstin shared was number 5 of videos. I'm losing track. But I think it's the convincing really comes from passion of the leadership of people that are spearheading the project. And then really putting, again, as a designer for us, we believe it's putting the visual together, because you can talk about it all day if you can show it before it's built. And then you can put people in that space and say, now close your eyes and imagine you are in this space. Does this feel like something you want to do, be part of? And yes, then let's invest in it. So I think it's really kind of the art and science of listening, actioning it out in terms of your design, and then really putting a strong, compelling vision with passion. I mean, nothing can replace passion. And I think you're kind of hearing that from all of us.
Yeah. Tina, do you want to build on that about seeing opportunity where it might not be easily apparent?
We definitely have stepped outside the box in looking at properties. Tim described one. Also, areas that we've already owned and thinking about them differently. Our community is changing, and change in community means there's change in the perspectives, the level of interest, and we have to make sure that as planners that we're also pivoting with making sure that we're providing these spaces. I think innovation is a little bit subjective, but when you have an organization that has collaboration with different organizations, then you start seeing vision a little bit differently. You can kind of be playful with it, more creativity, and then the investment parts come along. When you can design things, plan them, design them, then it's kind of a really nice blend to see that then the funding comes along with it. And when you're stepping outside the box and thinking differently, I think more participation comes along as well. And I feel like we're doing more of that, which comes with the listening, the more engagement, but also just looking to see what are our communities looking like? Are we serving the communities that the needs of the communities?
Well said, well said. So we're down to 2 quick questions for the panel, then we're going to get to your questions. And this is for all of the panelists. So we're on the grounds of a university, and this is where young minds are being sent into the world to do great things. What's your advice for the students that are listening, the students that are here? And Tina, we'll start with you.
Probably the same advice that I had years ago as an MENR student, and that was have grit and make sure that you stay with your passion, what you're learning, and what means the most to you. And if you do that and you're listening along the way, then you really can't go wrong in the end.
Tim?
Never work a day in your life. William's laughing because he knows what I mean by that.
I do.
But I'm telling you, I'm 30 plus years into this career, and I have never worked a day in my life because every day is guided by this instead of this. And I hope my advice didn't get somebody fired sometime in the future, but it's worked for me.
Great. Megha, what's your advice?
And this is something I kind of live by, so I'll tell you, and hopefully it'll work for you too. Serve in your community, serve in kind of boards, in volunteer kind of work. If it's a cleanup, start there, right? But work your way through it, and it's again, if you do that, you'll feel the connection to the land, to the people, to a mission, and obviously it's a great networking opportunity as well.
Great, and my advice is remember that MORPC has paid internships, and you can get really great experience with that. So, all right, our last question, and this is a quick one because Joe's going to tell me I got 2 minutes. So, panelists, speed round. We're all here involved in waterways or nature because it's our profession, but also it brings us joy, and we find fun in it. So, what kind of joy do you find in this rapid 5 work? What do you find fun? And remember, quick.
Okay. So, I grew up next to an ocean, so if you can close your eyes. To me, imagine kind of being at the water's edge. It's almost a spiritual journey. So rapid, we don't have an ocean here, but rapid to me is a way to connect to water the way I've never been able to or never thought we could. So stepping into water with bare feet, the sound of water. I mean, I could write like Niam's poetry right now, right? But that's the kind of, that's the joy it brings to me.
That's great. Tina?
Similar, I didn't live by the ocean, I didn't grow up by the ocean, but thinking about the joy that it intrinsically brings is something that is an asset and not something that others can just say that they have. And because we have 5 really amazing river systems that this collaboration is bringing together, there's a lot of joy to be had from a recreational standpoint, from a conservation standpoint, but also just thinking about it from what if the river systems that were there were systems that we couldn't enjoy, that the water didn't allow for that, impoundments occurred, and things like that. To me, the joy is already there. It's what we're building on.
Great. Tim?
The best way to avoid poison ivy is to get poison ivy.
Thank you. It's good advice. It's good advice. I think I'll just close before I turn it to Joe by saying, go out into nature, close your eyes, and just take a deep breath and listen to what you hear and feel it. And maybe, yes, Tim, get muddy. Hopefully not poison ivy. But the joy of that and the calm it can give you is so powerful. And I know that grounds a lot of us in our careers and our professions. So with that, let's give the panel a round of applause, and then I'm going to turn it to Joe.
Thank you, William. Thank you, panel. Our first question will come from the YouTube audience. Shelley Douglas, Executive Director of Green Columbus and SENR alum. Hi, Shelley. She asks, will the construction of bridges and trails for Rapid 5 projects disturb our naturalized riparian areas surrounding the rivers? And before you answer, if you have a question, you're either welcome to come up to the mic and ask it, or just raise your hand and I'll run you the microphone.
Great. Maybe we start with Tim and Tina.
I'm going to stay short. Absolutely not.
To build on Tim's comment, I think that infrastructure is a way of connecting, but it's also can be an oversight of something that we need to make sure we're mindful of, and knowing the spaces. Some of those areas, again, create connectivity, but also can definitely impact the ecological systems.
And that's what designers get paid to do, right?
Well, I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Throw the challenge out there. Make it a challenge that the riparian edges will not be disturbed, and there has to be a design way around it. Of course, there might be some cost involved, but you decide what's important. If you want to protect the riparian edge, it can be done.
Great. Great question. Yes. All right, next question.
Hi, my name is Danielle Bush.
Oh.
Big fan of Metro Parks, former employee, former volunteer. Even, in fact, I want to go back to Metro Parks to work in the future. But I'm wondering, where does Linden lie within the Rapid 5 program? I have concerns that my community might not receive as many benefits as in the future, especially with the huge gap in green space accessibility.
Yeah, really important question. And Tina?
No idea what the question was. I didn't hear it.
It was about Linden and where it lies in the
Yes.
in the Rapid 5 network.
You start. I got a good finish.
I want to talk about it because I'm excited. So in the Linden area, earlier I had mentioned about the 7-acre linear park that we're in the process. I think we just acquired the last private piece. And that in and of itself is a space that connects so many communities. I don't remember the exact number, but a tremendous amount of communities. And Linden is a tricky space because it's in two different watersheds, right? It's partially in Alum Creek, partially in the Olentangy, which is good. It's double covered. But I think that the first space for Linden is acquiring the 7-acre linear park space and having that green space, and then moving to what are the next steps for connectivity to the waterways.
So the Linden community is near and dear to my heart. My first full-time employment was at the Linden Community Center, where this new guy to the community started hiking, fishing, and all kinds of programs. And I'm looking at a friend in the audience. We actually took a group of kids from Linden to snorkel with manatees in Crystal River, Florida, thanks to a little bit of a partnership with the Columbus Zoo back in the time when they first got their manatees. And Tina hit it. It's in two watersheds. And one of my favorite watersheds in all of Central Ohio is the Alum Creek watershed. And I tell this story a lot of times to Rapid 5 audiences. There's some grandma sitting on a hill in Brittany Hills telling her grandkids, don't go down to that river, it's dangerous. We need to change that, because that river corridor is utterly spectacular. And we, through design, through programming, through resource management, need to change that mantra.
And I think it's so important as we're thinking about this too. As professionals, we're not designing things for the community. We have to design with the community and listen and make sure that all of these things connect to what they want. We've got another question over here.
I'm Corey Sedmak from Franklin Soil and Water. Thanks, panel, for being here. It's always great to hear about this project and some of the updates. Do you all have a specific timeline for starting implementation of some of these projects? And if so, what's one project you're really excited for?
Great question.
Boy, I don't know why Tina handed that off, because Tina and I's full-time job is working on Rapid 5 projects, because that's the beauty. We have 5 river corridors in Central Ohio. They all touch. But I can speak purely from a Metro Parks perspective. We are under shovel with 2 projects within the Rapid 5 system. Great Southern, which I mentioned, which is right on the banks of the Scioto River. It's going to be a really cool linear park that's going to grow over time. The other one, big announcement, drum roll please. We picked up a piece of land from the YMCA a few years ago, their old Hoover Y camp. Last Friday, we closed on a 70-acre parcel immediately adjacent to it from Shelley and Sands, which is a 70-acre quarry. That is going to become our next metro park right on Big Walnut Creek, drum roll. It is going to be bank-run metro park. First time that's ever announced anywhere. Wow. My PR staff is going to get really upset here because we had a big rollout plan.
Right. There's just a couple hundred people watching. No.
Yep.
Yeah, don't worry.
But no, that's where we are. We're doing Rapid 5 projects as we speak.
I think it's woven into the fabric, like Tim was stating. You know, it's something that we're thinking about actively with all of our acquisitions or park improvement projects. And we have a couple new acquisitions that we targeted specifically that are in the Big Darby watershed. So thinking about, because that's kind of the southern reach, and thinking about how are we getting more green spaces surrounding the Blueway system, and then also how are we, what's the thinking around getting people into the Blueway system a little bit farther south as well.
And again, I said this before, for us, every project we work in Central Ohio, in spirit, is a Rapid 5 project. So whether it's working for the Columbus Metropolitan Libraries and their open space system, or a developer project and a roof garden, or a health campus, it's always those little pieces that I think make up for like the connectivity, the dots. I guess dot connection is what we do. So every project's there.
Great. A familiar face with a question over here.
Yes, I'm Don Anderson, former Director of Natural Resources, and I have a question about accessibility, and especially we are a car-dominated culture, and accessibility to these greenways is difficult for a person who is not able, and I'm not able to drive a car right now. So how do you integrate transportation systems into this work?
I love that question, Director Anderson, because that's the work of our team at MORPC. But I'm going to let Megha jump in.
I'll start by saying I'll let them kind of get to the specifics. If you design for, let's say you, or for me, kind of with my child in a stroller, then you will be not just designing for that group, but it's better for everyone. So we kind of start at that level, and that's, I think, all our thinking should be. How do we make sure the most vulnerable populations can get to it, can have access? A personal pet peeve of mine is missing sidewalks. You know, if we started there, what a great win. But there's a lot more we can do, and I'll let you speak to all the mobility initiatives going on.
Part of one of the programs, Insight 2050, is kind of looking at and building upon transportation, generally speaking. And part of the work that we do within the city is accessibility for non-able bodies, and thinking about how are we creating these spaces that provide access, holistic access, safe access for everyone. And our parks are open to everyone. We need to make sure that we're creating amenities, transportation for everyone, and making sure that we're designing some of these spaces, some of the access spaces, that has to be something that's just built in with how we're designing.
Beautiful question, because I have 4 great answers for you, and I'm looking at Kerstin because I know I'm going to miss some. But Metro Parks is working with many other communities in Central Ohio on exactly what you're talking about. How do we, and we call them east-west connectors, and really when we're doing the regional planning part of this, we're working with the City of Columbus, the City of Westerville, and Metro Parks right now on an east-west connector along kind of Worthington Road, and then Park when it's in Columbus, and then it's Main Street in Westerville. But it's really the start of connecting the Alum Creek Trail to the Olentangy Trail. Go a little bit south, right into our Linden community. We're working with Columbus Public Service on a rebuild of Hudson Avenue that's going to have a multi-use trail that eventually is going to connect the Alum Creek all the way down to the Olentangy. It's going to get really tough from 71 somewhere around Hudson to get there, but we're going to get there. Go a little further south, working with Public Service again on the Williams Road rebuild. Williams Road is going to get rebuilt, which is going to, strangely enough, connect Great Southern all the way out to Three Creeks Metro Park. So these are challenges, and I'm sitting here in 30 seconds told you 4 great projects. They are all unbelievably challenging of how to do. But with great teamwork, they're going to happen.
Yeah, and from the regional level, our team helps communities prioritize how to spend all the federal dollars for transportation. And the way that our communities have structured it is that every time we spend dollars on an infrastructure project, we have to contemplate connections, accessibility, how you can do mobility. Yes, Tim, yeah. No, yeah, exactly.
The other one we're working on regionally, and I'm looking at Kerstin, is the acquisition of the old Norfolk and Southern rail line from downtown Hilliard to Crew Stadium. Speaking of unbelievably difficult projects, that is number 1 on the list. And if you don't know, working with the railroad is one of the most pleasant experiences short of a colonoscopy.
Don't worry, Tim, that last one didn't make it on the microphone, so only us in the room heard that.
Oh, that's good, because we started with inspiration in the humanities, and anyhow, let's go to a familiar face with a question.
William, can I just chime in?
Of course.
I do want to say that I think we should, every park, every space we design, to gentleman's question here, we must think about a transit stop.
Yep.
And then there are other ways to get to these places if you're not walking or you're not jogging and don't have a personal car, is your ride shares. So let's build that infrastructure in the parking lots and all of that, so you're not just dependent on the single car.
Well said, well said.
So my question's inspired a bit by in the spring, I teach an intro to sustainability class, and we reviewed some of the Rapid 5 materials, and some of the promotional materials really sort of like present a very beautiful, lovely sort of thing. And so it prompted a discussion in our class about gentrification. And I mean, I wonder if one of my concerns is, one of the concerns that came up in the class was, one of the legacies of Rapid 5, which is very exciting. I'm totally supportive, and I think it'll be great in terms of what the environmental impacts would be. But what if the legacy of it is that we've gentrified and we've really sort of like pushed aside a lot of our populations we intended to serve? Because I've been living in Columbus for 25 years, and it seems like every time we have a natural resource development of a magnitude, like what we did downtown and putting the flood wall up and protecting Franklinton's a much different community now. And so with the growth that we're expecting, Rapid 5 could just sort of contribute to sort of like a lack of affordable housing becoming even a more prominent sort of problem for us. So I'm curious sort of like how we're weaving that into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, because I think it's really at the core of the equity piece with Rapid 5. And before I turn it to the panel, I think the way that we're viewing this is every neighborhood deserves access to nature. Every neighborhood deserves access to the trail system and waterways. And, well, thank you. And so we have to design in a way that makes sure we're being really thoughtful about how we're making those investments, but we shouldn't shy away from giving every neighborhood that kind of access. And I know we all feel pretty passionately about that. Megha, you look like you're about to jump.
Well, I want to say this, that gentrification is the bane of urban planners. And this is something we learned, we talked of in school. When I was in school, there are so many scholarly articles. I don't think we've solved it, because there's like a catch-22 here, right? When you make a place beautiful and something that everyone wants to drive to, invest in, suddenly the values, it's a part of a capitalist society. Prices are going to go up, right? So one way could be where the public sector comes in and says, we are going to, and again, this is all economics and stuff, right? Way beyond my thing. But can we cap it, saying that no matter what investment goes here, and I don't know how you do it, because everybody wants to make a buck and to make profit, but could we hold on to the level of rents here? Will we always subsidize in this neighborhood no matter what? Again, I don't know if that's a solution, but that's one way of thinking about it. But it is a very, very complex issue, and I don't know if we have a solution for it.
It's the irony of the city of Columbus handing us this microphone, because all I'm going to talk about is the city of Columbus and this question. I think the city of Columbus has taken great strides in implementing affordable housing, and I think there's probably a more different way of saying that, into their projects, and we're working with them. You know, a broken record here, but Great Southern Metro Park has a very large affordable housing component immediately adjacent to it. You know, almost every city council meeting right now, when you see the developers, ooh, the evil developers, but our city council is really driving them to more affordable housing components integrated with that. Is it the ultimate solution? No. I think really you hit it perfectly. We have to be aware of that every step we take along the way.
I think,
I was just going to add, housing insecurities are something that we have to be aware of, no matter the neighborhood, but also to make sure that we're providing the spaces, not just the housing spaces per se, but the green spaces, again, creating connectivity, but equitable access, safe, equitable access. And we know from a lot of research that providing green spaces for folks is really the way to go to be able to help with all different kinds of aspects of life. So that's something, along with housing insecurities, that we're thinking about through all of our economic development throughout the city.
and just to close the answers to that question, centering the work, starting with equity, starting with that question in mind, I think is really important. So much of gentrification happens when you're not thoughtful about it, when you're not thinking about how to design. I think we're to our last question. The former director of Metro Parks. Good to see you.
Thank you. So it's great to have a panel that has vision so good that they can see things that never were, and that's the advice to our students, is to have vision so good that you can see things that never were. My question, and gets into the whole range, and you've talked of projects that fit into it, but how do you make this affordable for the home run? What's the real funding plan? This is not only complex, which you've acknowledged, but it's a very expensive plan. Is there a plan in place yet on how we really afford the entire project?
Yeah, I think Tim's going to pay for it. Is that right? Or teasing?
No, see, John sets us up for a perfect answer. The quick answer to that, John, is we don't have the funding plan yet. What we need is this, and when I say this, it's the community needs to identify. So, once again, an example: Great Southern, Bank Run. It's not even in my vernacular yet. These are all Rapid 5 projects that have already been funded by the voters of Franklin County with the passage of our 2018 levy, Metro Parks levy. Columbus has funding dedicated to the development of parks. Columbus works, Tina, I should probably work for you, has mechanisms in place that development has funding mechanisms. Now, there are grandiose land acquisition goals and everything that we're going to need to find outside funding for, whether that's through private donations, whether that's through gifting, whether that's through some type of revenue-based model. We don't know it to this date, but that is the nexus of Rapid 5 is how we're going to put this together.
Great. And we'll give Megha the last word.
Well, I was going to give it here to a representative from American Rivers. We were just chatting at the table. She's got the money.
Oh.
So she's good. But we're just talking about that, and we almost anticipated this question, and she said, there is money out there. There's money out there. We just have to find a way to put it all together into the big idea, and the idea is there, right? So we now take all the source of money that's out there and put it to one cause, and that's it.
Yeah, vision and partnerships will get it done. Let's give this panel a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, William. Thank you, Megha, Tina, Tim. Kerstin and Liam, thank you for your presentations earlier today. Joe's going to hate me here because he put in my notes, consider sharing some unscripted remarks on what you gained, and Joe doesn't know how long I can talk, so no, I'll be very, very brief, but this is absolutely exciting to me. This is, as I hear everyone talking about Rapid 5 and the plans for Central Ohio, it kind of brings me back to sort of everything that's driven me in my career. I started out in high school with an interest in architecture. I was a first-generation college student, and I chose a school that didn't have an architecture program. I don't know why, but so as I got into environmental economics, I had that same feeling towards nature that I used to have towards buildings, and I still have towards buildings. The same feeling of awe when I see a beautiful building built is the same feeling I get when I go to the Grand Canyon. That passion for that feeling of passion that comes from the intersection of how economies develop, how communities develop, and how we can do that in sync with nature is just absolutely fascinating to me. And it's everything that we do here in the School of Environment and Natural Resources. It's everything we do here in the College of Food, Ag, and Environmental Sciences. So what I want to offer to all of you is if there's any way that we can help beyond training the next generation of planners, of environmental advocates, let us know. Reach out to us. We already have partnerships, multiple partnerships, at faculty level, at student level. If there's anything I can do personally, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm really looking forward to continuing partnerships that can push these efforts forward. So thank you all. As is our EPN tradition, we want to recognize you each with a certificate of appreciation. Joe will hand those out. These are to acknowledge your work to help us learn and shape our world for the better. So thank you all. Can we have one more round of applause for our panelists? I have a few more announcements to make. Are you okay? Yeah. Sitting here, right? Okay. So that concludes today's program. Please turn to the back of your brochure for details of our next breakfast event. On Tuesday, October 12th, the EPN will return to this venue to host Designing Circular Economy Strategies from Within the Textiles and Fashion Industry. To the surprise of many, the apparel, textile, and fashion industries produce a significant impact on our environment. The average American consumes roughly 83 pounds of fiber material for clothing per year. That requires a corresponding 6,314 gallons of fresh water to be processed. From a greenhouse gas perspective, the apparel industry contributes nearly 8% of annual total greenhouse emissions, which is more than the global shipping and aviation sectors combined. Reducing this impact will necessitate energy efficiency improvements and greater renewable adoption in the manufacturing sectors of the supply chain, and circular economy measures such as relooping recycled fiber into production systems will need to be implemented. Central Ohio, increasingly recognized as the United States' third capital of fashion, now employs more fashion designers regionally than any U.S. metro area outside of New York City and Los Angeles. In coordination with numerous university partners, Ohio State is a great place to host our Central Ohio community in a dialogue with globally recognized sustainability experts to review and advance knowledge in this high-impact industry sector. November will mark part 2 of our autumn series on regional circular economy strategies. Join waste management experts on November 14th as we together review which plastic products in the Central Ohio region can be utilized effectively in reuse or recycled forms or eliminated from the supply chain altogether. Leaders from Rumpke, Advanced Drainage Systems, SWACO, the City of Columbus, and Ohio State will review the context, emerging strategies, and market opportunities for the circular economy of Central Ohio's plastic streams. We'll end 2023 on the evening of December 5th with a statewide celebration of the eastern hemlock tree and to recognize the environmental professionals advancing the conservation of one of our region's most charismatic and ecologically significant native trees. And like all of our EPN breakfast events, our autumn series will be live streamed for free via EPN's YouTube channel. Registration is now open for each of the 3 programs. We encourage you to become an EPN member today through a free and easy process at epn.osu.edu. Once an EPN member, you can post events, job openings, and receive announcements about forthcoming breakfast programs. Within the last month, the 22 individuals listed on the screen joined the EPN. If you haven't done so already, add your name to the list of over 2,200 EPN members to further connect, grow, and inspire with fellow environmental professionals and enthusiasts in the months ahead. We encourage you to stick around for our next program, a 2-hour guided workshop offering tools and strategies to utilize ecologically healthy river corridors to stimulate community and economic development. This session, developed and led by Shannon Byers, a water economics and policy expert from American Rivers, is structured as a highly dynamic, participatory working and networking program that will directly address tools to improve the management of our regional waterways. Some of the specific tools that Shannon will explore during this session are listed in your agenda. And I promise you'll have some fun applying these to the Big Darby Creek, Scioto River, Olentangy River, Alum Creek, and Big Walnut Creek, among other Ohio water bodies. Joe Campbell will be stepping up here in about 10 minutes to provide further instructions, introduce Shannon, and our workshop session. We have EPN team members who will be resetting this room for the workshop mode, and food and beverages will continue to be served in the hallway until 11:45 this morning. While you're making your way out the door or clearing off your table, please pay close attention to the zero waste signs and instructions posted above the waste receptacle bins to determine if your items belong in the compost, recycle, or trash bin. Your actions will help us make this EPN Breakfast a zero waste event. Again, our next session will begin in 10 minutes here in this room. Thank you again for participating today, and have a nice rest of your morning.
That was great.
I saw that line. So